It is Friday, July 31st, 2026. It is just after noon, about 12:05. Today is a office work day for me. I work from home most Fridays. I have a home office. I work on Fridays. And I had just come out to the greenhouse. Oftentimes, one of the reasons I like kind of what I do here is that it is the opposite or very different from what I do in the office, which is part of the appeal. I think, I work with a lot of guys in IT and tech who work on their computers all day, then go home and work on their computers all night. And while that might have been more appealing to me years ago, it's not anymore. It's not that I don't like tech, but the balance in life. That's kind of what I want to talk about today. So this is my chore and cast. So our chore today, being the beginning of August, like an episode a couple days ago where we were planting onions, just taking a look at those. We are getting ready to start doing the fall planting to get things started. That we'll have for either a late fall harvest or that we will over winter and be able to harvest throughout the winter. And some of the things we'll actually plant them now, and so they'll be ready to harvest in the spring. And like I was saying before, what happens in the winter is a lot of things will hold, but they will stop their overall growth. Now, if you remember, we had looked and done the basil. I'm looking at this basil. It is looking absolutely fantastic right now. And I need to do a big harvest of the basil and get it in to the kitchen. But things are looking pretty good in the greenhouse. There's a few things I need to clean up and get rid of, but, there's always something to do. Okay, so while we're getting ready here, what I'm going to be doing is I have in my little planting area right here, I have this big plastic, tray that is designed for doing this potting that I'm doing. Let me take a picture. I can probably use this as the anchor part that has spillover for the dirt. And then on the left, there's a bucket. I'm left-handed, so I keep the bucket there. I know whenever the righties come in here, they kind of jack my system up. So that's just a bucket of potting soil that I can pull in. And then I pot things here. There's spillover of the dirt or water or anything else. And then I keep them stacked. So mostly I just use recycled pots that over the years, when you buy something at the store. So these are little 4-inch pots. There's all sorts of methods to do seed starting, and I see people doing like compressed blocks, and I'm looking over here. I have trays that have like 1 inch starting things, and I have 2-inch little starters. But I found that the 4-inch ones are basically where they grow the best, and I generally just plant in there. Now I use for my tables in the greenhouse. I have tables I've just built out of lumber. They're wood, so they do get wet in here. So they'll have a lifespan of, I don't know, 10 or 15 years before I have to replace them. And on top, I have trays. Now there's that basically trap the water, keep the roots a little bit wet, but mostly just keep everything from getting soaked in here. Because I have an automatic watering system. These misters come on however often I set them. This time of year, they're coming on about 3 times a day. So we want to trap the water. It also, when I come into the greenhouse, I can look at the tray. If the tray is full of water, then that little area is probably getting too much water. They need to be adjusted. And all of my misters having a little adjuster on there where I can control the amount of water flow. And if they're completely dry, then I know they're not getting enough water. So it helps me without like sticking my finger in every single pot. It helps me determine if things are generally getting enough water just at a visual, and then I can see what needs more attention. So like these two on the left here, they have a lot of water in them. The two on the right have a lot of water. The two in the middle are basically dry. Now I look, the ones in the middle are full of bigger things in gallon pots, so that tracks. So as the plants get bigger and bigger, they're absorbing more water. They're also respirating more water. So So that's about what I would expect. So one of these trays, and what I was going to say is, if I go to like the Home Depot or other places, these kind of trays here cost about $15 to $25 a piece. Now that doesn't seem like a big cost. Let's say they're $15. Let me just count here. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 trays. So that's $300 at $15 a tray. That's, not an insignificant amount of money. But I get these as the boot trays from IKEA. And you can actually order them. The closest IKEA is in Portland, which is about an hour and 45 minutes from here. You can actually order them and bring them home. And these are like, I think last I checked, they're $6.99 a piece. So they've been fantastic. It's just one of those things you can sometimes find what you need by not looking where you expect. So the boot trays from IKEA are my go-to drip trays for the greenhouse. And they're all kind of uniform size. And I've built my platforms to match them. So the platforms are just as deep as the IKEA trays. And then because they're all using a standard size tray, I can move them. So I can plant to the left and keep moving the trays and stuff around. They hold about, of these 4-inch pots, each tray holds about 21 these little pots. So I know that each tray will give me, 21 plantings. So it gives a good way to just kind of keep track of what's going on. Because that would be 3 pots across and 7 rows deep, 3 columns, 7 rows. So I oftentimes plant in increments of 3. So if I'm planting something, let's say I want a single plant, then I'll probably plant 3. If I want 2 plants, I'll probably plant 6. And then the others I can just toss, or I can give away, or sometimes leave them in the greenhouse or keep them as a backup. So I'm always kind of over planting. Because you can reuse the soil that you buy, because this potting soil, to get good potting soil, is more expensive than just regular fill dirt or digging a hole. But I'm slowly migrating that out into the beds. So over time, on a kind of a micro scale, little by little, I'm augmenting the soil that I use outside. So by overplanting, all the soil is going to be recycled. All the soil is going to be used. So there's not really waste in that format. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to clear up a little area here. I'm going to do the tray that's just to the right of my potting thing. And so I got a couple plants here. I'm just going to move to a different place and make sure it's all cleared out. It's good to lift the trays and see what's living underneath there. I get a lot of ants in here, especially in the winter, but they don't really hurt anything, so I don't worry about them too much. I operate on the principle that any kind of pesticide, any kind of poison that's used is going to go into the ground and negatively affect the environment in ways that I don't know. So that would be a last resort before I use any kind of chemical intervention on bugs and animals and things. I try to do more natural things first. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start filling up these pots and just move them over to the trays. We're just going to put the dirt in before we do anything else. So here we go. That's what I'm going to be working on. Now, I was thinking about the topic for today. I was actually making a spreadsheet or a document of different things I want to talk to you guys about. And there's a bunch. So I'm not going to run out of topics anytime soon. And I'm really enjoying this format, if nothing else for myself. It gives me a chance to kind of think through things and talk through things. And, it's kind of like shower thoughts. You sometimes can get better thinking in the shower because you're like doing something with your hands. So it occupies a part of your mind and allows your mind to kind of drift in very positive ways. Like to give shout out to the folks who are reaching out to me. I put the request, and I'm still going to put this out there. Send me your recording while you're choring. The couple I've gotten have been really fascinating for me to listen to, and you can let me know in the recording if you want that to be kind of private or if you want me to post it. I was thinking it might be interesting to hear what other people doing this sort of thing are doing and their chore thoughts and what they're musing on. So let me know. Otherwise, you can contact me at my email, john@john larson.org. And the reason I'm pimping that so hard is the main reason I'm doing this is because I feel like there's a lot of us scattered throughout who want to help, who really want to make an impact and figure out how we can solve some of these bigger problems we're talking about. And I want to create I hesitate to even use the word network because that's so associated with online services and stuff. And what I want is people who know other people who are doing the things. I want connection. So I want people to hear what I'm working on, so I can hear what they're working on, so we can plot and scheme together and help each other with these sort of things. Oh, there's ant larvae in here. That's interesting. Um, so that's the main reason I'm reaching out to y'all, because, and the main reason I'm doing this is to try to create those connections that I think social media and whatnot have gotten in our way of doing effectively. All right, so just filling these things up. So my topic today is about balance, because I was thinking about this as I was coming out, trying to decide what I'm going to work on. Oftentimes when I'm doing this, like I'm doing a little bit of work on a lunch break, um, I don't always feel like doing heavy physical work. So sometimes I'll hop on the tractor and move stuff around, or I might choose a job like this that's a little bit less impactful. But you know what? I was feeling kind of, uh, uh, I don't know, heavy from some of the meetings and things I've had at work. Nothing terrible. It's been a good week. I've got a great team, got a great place I work, but you still have to deal with problems. And sometimes by the end of the week, it's just, it's a lot. It's a lot. So, but coming out here, looking at this ant larva, looking at this potting soil, it's already kind of lightening my mood up. So thanks you guys for being here and helping with that. So we talked a little bit about kind of how I make this work, that I have no choice. There's no way around it as far as I can tell of doing this sort of thing full time in a reasonable way. You could possibly, if you gave up on things like having health insurance and you had a pot of money, because this is a really expensive little hobby. We can talk about that more in future episodes, like why it's so expensive. But basically, you can't really, or it's really hard to just like opt out of the world. You have to stay in the world. I need to be able to drive places. Sometimes I want to take my my partner out for dinner, or go see a movie or something like that, and that all takes cash. So that job and keeping that job has to be of primary concern. So that means you're doing all of your homesteading stuff, all of your agricultural things in the margins. And then just based on your operation, like since we have animals, they have to take precedent. They're a living thing. So every day I have to go out there and check their food, check their water, make sure there's no hazards, make sure their environment's safe and clean. I have to make sure on a very regular basis I'm mucking their stalls and keeping things under control. Every so often you have to deal with infestation of mites, or there might be worms, or who knows what you're going to deal with. These are living things, and living things have a set of problems dictated by nature. All right, I loaded that tray. I got the 21 a little thing set up in the tray. Now I'm going to take my mister, and I'm just going to wet things down. There's some art to planting. And over the past like 10 years, I've probably planted, 8,000 different plants. And it's only after that kind of scale that you start getting an intuitive feel for it. And one of the things is how lightly or solidly to pack the soil. You pack it too tight and the plants don't do well. You pack it too loose, there's air pockets and things, and that can cause all sorts of problems. So part of this is putting the soil in, wetting it down, letting it sit for a minute, and getting ready for the next one. All right, so I'm going to do, I think, maybe 2 more of these. So we need to get another tray going here. I think you're next. So balance is not just the balance between my social or my mental health life, taking breaks, spending time with friends, spending time with my partner, um, uh, and then spending time working on the homestead. But it's also the balance of what kind of work I do. I don't want to get so heavily involved in work I do out on the farm that I burn out on it. And one of the ways that I deal with that is by having multiple things that I can work on at any time. Sometimes that's a necessity of weather. So if I'm digging, there are conditions that make digging better than other conditions. Like I'm talking about the condition of the soil. If it's too wet, if it's too muddy, then, like my tractor might get stuck in the mud. If it's too dry, it's just a lot of work to get that bucket in there and cut the soil and make it productive. So oftentimes, depending on the rain and how wet things are, will determine what I'm working on. Well, what that means effectively is that there are jobs that sit sometimes for months. The best time to dig, if you're digging ditches or digging ponds or burying water lines or laying foundation, here for me is the spring, especially the late spring, and the fall. Pretty much up until December is the best time to dig. You get after January, February, March, and it's just too wet. It's just mud. And you get this time of the year, and the soil's really dry, and you just can't move things. So I always have several digging projects that just kind of sit around. When we have a nice heavy rain, you'll see me get up the next morning and I'll get a shovel and I'll go walk all of our ditches. So I'm looking for places where water's been kind of dammed up. You might have a mole or a vole kind of dig and put soil in there. You might have something just fall in. You might have a plant that is aggressive and has kind of moved things around. And the only way you can really see, because it's sometimes hard to see the fall of a ditch. You can't see a 6-inch fall over 50 feet visually. It's just too hard. But you can see where the water goes, because water absolutely follows the ground. So that's something that, depending on the conditions, might change what you're working on. And that's how you keep it in balance. Oftentimes in the morning, when it's cool, that's when I tend to work on more physical jobs. So like if I'm going to go weeding, I will do that first thing in the morning. Now I'm 53, so I can get down there and I'm still pretty mobile. But if I've spent 2 hours on my knees weeding, getting up and down, my knees start hurting. So I can't do that all day long. So I might do that for an hour or two, and then I switch to another job where I'm mostly on my feet. And then after that, I might switch to another job where I'm sitting. Like I might mow the lawn, or I might get on my tractor and do something. So I have to, part of the balance is keeping the physicality of my own health and my own well-being figured into the different jobs that I have. Another thing on balance is knowing what is the highest priority in terms of cost. Sometimes a job that sits might have enormous cost. Right now, we're in the process of repainting our barn. The best I can tell is the barn was painted once when it was built, which was about 1960. So this summer, I've been paying for folks to come in and do it as they have time. We've been stripping, all the loose paint off the barn, getting ready to paint it. But that job can take anywhere between now and October. I want to get it done before the rains fly, which will be, we'll start getting the earliest rains in September, and usually October is when they start coming in earnest. So that's not going to be my priority as I watch the calendar. But as those days start getting closer and closer to, say, like October 15th, that's going to prioritize up. So that's another element of balance. So we've talked about balancing with my regular job and my regular life, and we have to balance with my own physicality of what I can and can't do to avoid injury or burnout or other things physically. And then we have to balance with the weather. The other thing is keeping the systems in balance. Something I was talking about a little bit earlier last week is in the concept of permaculture, you have all these systems that are in balance. So like we were talking about composting, So you have your animals that are producing whatever you have from them, like your chickens producing eggs, but they're also producing their compost and manure, and you're trying to get these systems so they feed off of one another. So we're producing the fertilizer for the gardens from the rabbits and from the animals, but then we have to process the manure to make sure the ammonia gets out of it, and they're not quote unquote hot anymore, so they're ready to go in the gardens without causing problems. And so that means you have to have a weight cycle, have to have a place to put them, and you're trying to keep all these systems in balance at all the times, which changes where your focus is at. Likewise, one of the things I need to focus on, I have some rain gutters that need to be repaired. I have some rain collection barrels that need to be put in place, and things like that. That when I first built, like, let's say the chicken shed, the chicken house or whatever, I didn't put gutters on there, and I would like to have them there. They'd be better. It'd be better to harvest some of that water and move it away. But for the first couple of years, the rain just falls onto the ground. And that's one of those things that's not going to cause you long-term problems if you do it for a year or two. But if I have that water for 10 years beating on the ground, it's going to start modifying the quality of the soil and going to start undermining the foundation and those sort of things. Well, how do you know? Well, that's a important thing. It's you have to observe. The other day for our chore, we went on the walk, and I said that every day or every couple days, you just go on a walk and observe everything. What's working, what's not. Where do you see things that are dry? What do you see plants that maybe look like they're overwatered, underwatered? Are there sags in the fence? Did a deer run into one of your fences and semi knock it down? Do you have posts that aren't in the ground as well as they need to be? So you're constantly reevaluating the whole system. I see a lot of people. I just saw this before I came out. That somebody was on like Reddit trying to pimp out a new piece of software. I see this all the time. That you get techies who get into kind of a homesteading space online, and then they decide, hey, I'm going to use Raspberry Pi and I'm going to crank out this application. The ones that annoy me the most are ones who clearly have no idea what any of this is about, and they'll say, hey, what do you guys need software to do? And the answer is, well, if you have to ask that question, you're not the right person to do the software. First, understand what you're building it for, then go in and start doing it. But techies oftentimes invert a problem. They see it as a technical problem in search of a technical solution, as opposed to saying, hey, I've been gardening for 100 years, and this is the thing that I need. The reason I bring that up is I've oftentimes been a fan of stuff like that. When I first got here, I invested money in a weather station that had sensors. I just was looking at one of them that's hanging here in the greenhouse. I noticed that water has gotten into it over the years, and the LCD display is jacked up. So I had these sensors and this. I could get on my computer and I could see what the temperature was in all these different places, like the greenhouse or in my storeroom. I could see what the daily highs and daily lows were. I had water sensing temperatures that would tell me. I could put in the beds. I still have these things that tell me if it's too moist or too wet, too dry. And you know what? They're all stacked in a shed right now. And the reason is, the longer I've done this, the more I can tell by just looking at things. It was really important to me. I have spreadsheets. I used to keep track of the seeds and things that I was planting, and I was pretty meticulous 3 or 4 years ago. I would log everything, how, which seed variety I had, how long it had been in the greenhouse, how many things we planted, where they ended up. I'd created a system so I could map out and design and decide where things are going to go. But the longer I've been planting plants, after, again, my 5,000 plants, I just look at them. And the ones that I've done a lot, I can tell what their problem is. This guy's not getting enough water. That guy needs to be trimmed. These guys are looking good. That guy needs fertilizer. That guy needs, if you get what I'm saying, it becomes instinctual, because that's what knowledge is. And I think when people start out here, they don't realize that a lot of it is just understanding and realizing what can be done. My grandfather had been off and on throughout his life. He'd done many, many things, but one of the things he was a carpenter. And I remember my dad pointing out how amazing it was to work with my grandfather because he kind of had an eye, he could eyeball um, almost precisely um, how long a board should be or how things should be. He had an intuitive sense for that. That's not because he was a superhuman, that's just experience. Anybody who devotes time to something achieves that. So, part of that, since we're talking about balance today, if you insert into this whole thing, this technical layer, hey, I'm going to log everything, I'm going to have spreadsheets, I'm going to have software, I'm going to do design of my gardens, that's another level of complexity that you're trying to balance in the whole thing. Where if instead you're just walking around and saying, you know what, I see these plants here are doing well, and these ones that are 5 feet away are not. What's the difference here? Oh, well, these ones I used this watering method, and this ones I used this watering method, and this works better in this instance, and that works better in that instance. Some things like drip lines, some things like to be sprayed. It's like one of the most efficient ways to get water out there in a bigger area is to have a little spray, like a sprinkler. But some plants do not like them. You do not want to spray tomatoes. If you get tomato leaves wet, you're going to introduce all sorts of problems into the tomato. You want to drip water on the ground and only water a tomato's roots if you want the healthiest tomatoes. But that's not true for other plants. Some of them you water openly and they do wonderful. So that's a balance. Let's see. I'm sort of talking and I'm less talking, more worky here. I'm getting the second tray set up. So another aspect of balance is figuring out where you want to be and how you're going to get there. I think a lot of people come and they envision this this huge intricate. I know I don't say that word correctly. They think, okay, well, I want cattle and I want sheep and I want chickens and I want ducks and I want peacocks and I want all this kind of stuff, and they go to the store and it's easy to try to buy your way into what you want to be without fully grasping and understanding how this is going to affect everything else. There's a topic I want to cover in more detail, but I want to talk about the three aspects of doing this or really doing anything. This is a concept I really pull from my job working in technology, that you have you have a operational cost. So whatever you do, like let's say you have gardens, you have to operate them. And that means you have to weed them, you have to plant the things, you have to get soil in, you have to water them, you have to use fertilizer. Those are all operational costs. So if you wanted to, you could probably measure really carefully and calculate, okay, if I have a 4 foot by 8 foot bed, then operationally it's going to cost me 15 minutes a week for 19 weeks of the year. So that's an operational cost. And then there's a maintenance cost. Now, the difference between operations and maintenance is things break down over time. So I wouldn't call like fertilizing, I wouldn't call that maintenance. I would call repairing the side of the raised bed that where the wood is kind of rotted through and it's collapsed. That's maintenance. Maintenance seems kind of like unanticipated costs when things break down. But if you're good at doing work planning, then you will have planned a contingency for maintenance. And then there's basically new construction. That has a cost. And one of the main costs is time and resources. So whenever you're building anything new, you have to have an investment into that. You need to get the capital, you need to get the money to do it, you need the time to devote to it. That is a short-term thing. Like that time is going to go away eventually, and you're not going to need to devote time because the construction project ends. But every construction project, every new thing you're doing is going to create maintenance and operations. So when I've talked to people who have done what I'm doing here and burn out, and I think the first big burnout, I've talked to a lot of people who did this for 5 years or less and then quit. I think some of it is not recognizing and understanding the maintenance costs as well as the operational costs. They get seduced by the construction. If you go to like the subreddit for like chicken coops, what you're going to see is a lot of brand new, sparkly, shiny chicken coops. And here's the key. Spiders love chicken coops. If you're seeing a picture of a chicken coop that's not full of spider webs, you either have a fastidious person who's going through there daily and pulling down all the spider webs, which that would be an operational cost, which would make your chicken operation more expensive than other people's. You're probably looking at a brand new coop and not somebody who's operated one for a long time, not somebody who's dealt with the ongoing cost of keeping chickens in a single place for 5 or 10 years. You do that, you're going to get mites, you're going to deal with their droppings, you're going to deal with all sorts of problems that aren't going to manifest that first 6 months you have that thing together. So why am I going on about this? Because again, it's a matter of balance. If you're not balancing your operations with your maintenance, with your new construction, both in terms of budgeting money, but recognizing where your time is going to go. So all of us, including myself, when you first start an operation like this, you are overzealous on construction because you want to build it. And oftentimes you're starting from blank slate. There are no gardens. There are no, orchards, that you don't have any animals or whatever. So you want to focus on that. But you're not necessarily aware, because you haven't done it, how much it's going to cost you to just keep that thing up and running. And that's the matter of balance. So I think success in the long run is not necessarily how much money you save or what kind of produce you can produce or how much food you grow on your own or how you change your lifestyle. The real measure of success is, can you keep everything in balance that you need to do? And that's a constant question you have to check. But things get easier as you do them over time. You start getting instinct for stuff. You start understanding intuitively how much things are going to cost. You start getting really a lot better at estimating and budgeting things, about figuring out what the seasonality and the time is. So I don't mean to be all doom and gloom. This stuff comes. But if you can't work your way through that first 5 years of dealing with your own inevitable mismanagement of trying to get an operation up and trying to achieve balance, you're not actually going to be able to achieve the balance. In other words, you have to pass through the shadow of the valley of death. You have to make the mistakes. You have to give yourself the grace to do it wrong so that you can correct it and do it right. Because if you're going to hold yourself to a standard that it only works if you do it right out of the gate, and that you never waste a dollar or you never make a wrong decision, you are going to crash out. All right, I've got those 2 trays planted, and I think that this is probably the longest one I've recorded. So that gives us enough for this one. Remember, again, you can contact me at john@johnlarson.org. I would love to hear from you, especially those of you who are practicing. And remember, to be a practitioner doesn't mean you need to own land. It can be as simple as trying to do things in your bedroom, in your dorm room. All right, have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you guys on the next one.